Hey everybody, how are you doing? I hope you're having a great day. Today, we're going to be talking about Caesar. We're going to be talking about Caesar and why you should probably be using her. My name is Yojimbo Blade and let's get started. However, before we start, I am not delusional. Yes, Astra Yao is better than Caesar at buffing your team's DPS. I'm saying this now because some people are going to say, oh my gosh, you're saying Caesar is better than Astra? Well, no. If you're a perfect player, then no, of course not. That's silly. Of course Astra's better than Caesar. But that's only true for some players, and we'll talk about that when we get there. And to clarify, this is only about their gameplay specifically. This is not about their design, their appeal, the writing or voice acting. Those are important. But that's not the scope of this video. The scope of this video is discussing why Caesar is worth using. And you've probably been told this by every creator. They don't play tower, but they will say, oh, she's amazing in the tower. We're not talking about the tower. It's not important. Caesar is incredibly useful in the tower, and that's not relevant to the discussion we're having. So we're not gonna mention it. And finally, first and foremost, the purpose of this slideshow discussion is to encourage and teach players how to play the game. I want people to really enjoy playing the game if they enjoy doing it. And part of that is understanding why are some agents better than others. So when I make comments about players not being good or not having skills, that is not a moral judgment. If a player is good at the game, that doesn't matter. If a player is bad at the game, well, who cares? That's not important. I'm definitely not talking down to the people who are trying to improve or struggling, because what do I get out of that? I'm trying to help you. I want to see you get better. The people I am talking down to are the people who think they're good, or the people who think they understand the game, but they actually don't. Maybe they understand some part of it, but they don't understand the full picture. These are the main points that we're going to talk about. We will explain these later. This is just a synopsis. First off, Caesar is simpler to build and use than other agents. Caesar makes the game simpler to play. Caesar is amazing for inexperienced players. And finally, Caesar is good enough to do everything you want a support to do. Before we kick things off, first, we have to define the words we're going to use. So that way, when I use these words, you have a full picture of what I mean when I say them. So for this first one, investment and why it matters, I'm going to explain everything I mean when I talk about investment. And it's probably more than what you're thinking. Next, what makes an agent worth using? What makes an agent good? And finally, what makes an agent good enough? So first off, investment. You've probably heard this word thrown around, and it makes sense why. So Zenless is, like most gacha games, actually a resource management game. These resources include the materials to pull for agents. So that includes monochromes and polychromes, and all the other little currencies you get in the shop. And because you can buy these materials with money, this also includes money. If you spend $1 million on this game, I guess thank you for funding it. I hope you have fun barely playing the game because you turbo stomp everything. Next is pretty obvious. It's the materials to level up your equipment and characters. You want to improve your agents' levels, you want to improve their skills, you want to improve their W engines, you want to improve their drive discs, want to improve their cores, and that takes resources to do. So that's another resource you have to invest into characters. And finally, this is a resource I really don't see players really talk about. They mention it sometimes, but no one really addresses it. It's time. Yes, time is a limited resource. There's a reason why they don't give you infinite battery. It's so they can manipulate players to spend time playing the game and hopefully spending money. And this is not just the time needed to build characters, because that is true. It's the time needed to play characters. What does that mean? So, for example, we'll say character A, his combo does 100 damage. And let's say character B has a combo of the same duration, but his combo, he does 120 damage. Ooh, that's a 20% increase. But to play Agent B, you need to spend 100 hours perfecting every frame perfect input to reach that level of performance. Otherwise, he only does 80 damage. hey, this character A, I didn't have to invest any time into him, and I got 100 damage. And this character B, I had to invest 100 hours, and then I got 120 damage. Those are different levels of investment, and those are worth discussing. I know some players don't want to talk about that. I think that's really short-sighted. I think you should talk about it, because next up is the worth of an agent. Agent worth is far too subjective unless it's narrowed down. I don't know what you value. I don't know what you want to do. I don't know if you think something is worth doing. Is it worth it to brush your teeth every 5 minutes? Probably not. I don't know why I said this. Hey, editor, make sure to cut this out. Agents are worth using if you like their visual design, if you like their sound design, if you like their gameplay, if you like their writing, if you like their voice acting, if you like the synergy they have with teams, if you like the way they let you have different play styles. There are a bunch of different reasons for why an agent may be worth using. For this discussion specifically, which is about gameplay, agents are worth using if they solve problems. Solve problems? What is this, a math class? Well, we'll get there. Because speaking of problem solving, what makes agents good in gameplay? We're gonna scratch our brains a little bit. However you want to describe it, good agents solve problems. They overcome obstacles. They beat challenges. Good agents do these things. And agents are even better if they can solve more problems or can more efficiently solve problems. Conversely, bad agents either do not solve problems or they create problems. So when I say good and bad agents solve or create problems, this is relative to the problems you are facing. So for example, with Ben and Anton, if you have a team and you're thinking, man, I have an open slot for a second support, but I'm taking a lot of damage. I wish there was someone who could like give a shield to help, make sure I don't get hit. Well, Ben's right there. You can just throw him on the team. He presses EX and you got a shield. It's not a giant shield, but it's a shield. It solves the problem of trying to not take damage, and hey, you even get crit rate from it. Hey, that's something. That's buffing the team. Well, I don't actually, my crit rate's already really high. I don't need that. And I'm not really getting hit that much, so I don't really need the shield. Well then yeah, Ben's not really solving a problem, so you probably shouldn't use him. That doesn't mean he's bad. I put it up there, he could be like a neutral agent. But I looped it in with bad because ideally you want to have a team with agents who all solve problems. And I picked on Anton specifically because Anton is one of those agents where if you run out of energy, it's really bad because now you have to build up your energy again and your Anton isn't doing the damage he wants to do. That's just creating problems because now the things you could have killed before, well, you don't have the damage to do it now. But if you create an Anton team that never runs out of energy, then yeah, Anton's perfectly fine in that team. For the players who understand how to play Anton, Anton doesn't create those problems, so he's fine. Finally, good enough. This might be an odd term for some people, and this is kind of rooted from questions players will ask. It kind of ties back to agent worth. They'll ask, is this character worth using? Or should I pull for this character? Or should I do this? Should I do that? And that's a funny question because they're asking strategy game questions about their action game. And because of that, it makes sense to respond to these strategy game questions with strategy game answers. And of course, this is not a one-to-one because ZZZ is a live service game, but it's similar enough to talk about. In short, units that are amazing early, but only decent later, are probably better than units that are weak early, but great later. In Zenless, I would argue early game is when your Internaut level is below or around level 52, and late game is when your Internaut level is above 58, somewhere around that area. So what are some strategy game answers for this question? Well, I tried to choose ones that were simple and easy to talk about. First off is Nidoking in Pokemon Red and Blue. When you ask who is the strongest Pokemon in Gen 1, you usually get a bunch of different answers. You usually get the ones people like, or maybe they watch competitive Pokemon. But when you are actually playing through the game, Nidoking is by far the strongest Pokemon you could possibly be using. I'm not going to go into all the details. Basically, if you watch any Pokemon Red speedrun, the speedrun is get Nidoking as quickly as possible, you get his final evolution at around level 17, and then you turbo stomp the entire game. Nidoking demolishes the early to mid game. It's just unfair. It's no contest. Other Pokemon just can't compete against him. Our next example is Marcus from Fire Emblem 6 and 7. When you are grouped with a bunch of really weak units, Marcus is the only one who can demolish every enemy in the game. If you have any obstacle, what you do is you throw Marcus at it and Marcus demolishes it. Marcus will trivialize the early game, and then eventually, because his stats don't increase that much when he levels up, Marcus becomes weaker in the late game. But by the time you get to that point, you already have your army built up to the point where it doesn't really matter, and you're probably still using him in the end game. For Marcus, as you progress through the game, you will be given more powerful units, but generally speaking, even if they are stronger than Marcus, they come at a time when you maybe have 15 answers to problems, and they're just another one of them. And Marcus comes at a time when you maybe have 3 answers to the problem, and he's the best answer to every problem. He has a lot of utility, even outside of combat. So even if he does fall off and you stop using him for combat, you can still use him to accomplish objectives that other units can't do. So what do these two examples have in common? Well, they're both available incredibly early, and would be far worse if you got them later. Both are incredibly powerful, and are good enough to keep using later. And here's the main point, because they are so good at solving problems and accomplishing objectives, you have a powerful advantage in the early game. And you can leverage this advantage into the late game. How do you do that? Well, it makes using new units easier. What Nidoking does is instead of having to, we'll say 2, instead of having to train up 2 really weak Pokemon into Pokemon that are great, you can just focus on training 1 Pokemon and then just use Nidoking to demolish any obstacle in your way. You can focus all your attention onto making one of those Pokemon really good. Even if Nidoking does become weaker later, it doesn't really matter because now you have one Pokemon that you've invested all your resources, there's the word, investment, you've invested all those resources into him. So now that Pokemon, who is better in the late game, can demolish everything for you. Whereas without Nidoking, well, now you need to invest those resources, you need to split them across 2 Pokemon. They don't clear the early to mid game as well. You're still struggling to beat things that Nidoking would have turbo stomped. And it's the same with Marcus. You could try to train your entire army of really weak units that have really poor stats, and because Marcus exists to demolish the hardest objectives in the game, you can focus on training your units against enemies that aren't going to immediately kill them, and that way you can have them grow and eventually become better than Marcus. Can you replace these units? Well, sure you can, but like, why? They're good enough. Replacing them costs more resources. That's not a smart investment. Many players enjoy the grinding and training that's part of the growth experience. I enjoy that myself, and that's totally cool. Again, these are designed to be beaten by children, so you can use whoever you want, and that's fine. But not using them is inefficient. And this is the strategy game answer, not the fun answer. But for pure efficiency, you might as well just use them. Because you're using them, you can still use the units you want to use anyway. Because it makes using those units you want easier. Alright, that's all the definitions. Here's the big claim. Agents that solve problems with less investment are better than agents that solve those problems but want or need more investment. Granted, problems and obstacles are part of what make games enjoyable, otherwise there's no push or pull in gameplay. Now that we've talked a lot about problems, what is the main problem in Zenless? Well, apart from being a live service gambling game designed to induce FOMO that entices players to spend money, the main problems players might say are DPS. And that's fair. If you can't deal damage, enemies don't die. Some might say, well, it's resource management. We talked about that. And that's fair. If you don't have resources, you can't build characters or get new characters. So maybe that's the main problem. Someone might say, well, it's actually punishing mistakes. I see a lot of guides out there like, the tips you should know if you're a new player, don't make these mistakes. And even in combat, a lot of the new enemy attacks were designed specifically to trick players. However, I would argue that none of these, besides the gambling one, are the main problem in Zenless. Because the main problem is understanding how to play. Because from what I've seen and observed, most players lack the experience and a fundamental understanding of how to play the game. They don't understand team building, they don't understand team rotation, they don't understand attack combos, they don't understand equipment, they don't understand enemy attack patterns, they don't understand skill investment, they don't understand leveling up their cores or their W engines or their drive disks. Notice how I kind of mentioned all things related to the previous problems. And that's because the issues of DPS, resource management, and punishing mistakes are often solved after players have a decent understanding of how to play the game. Granted, it's kind of in the company's interest that you don't understand how to play, and that might sound weird, but what these live service games do is they create the problem and then they'll sell you the solution. But that solution costs around $200 in pulls. Wow, that's a pretty big problem. If only you had some money to solve it. The community has made a lot of tools and guides to help players understand how to play, and that's way more helpful than just saying, oh, just use this disc set. Cool, but that doesn't help you learn how to play the character. Oh, if you have a stunner, just use King of the Summit. Well, that's fine, but if they aren't learning to press EX when they should, then what was the point of telling them to use King of the Summit? They still don't know what they're doing. Now they are just slightly better, but still don't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it. Now we're going to go over some comparisons. This might be controversial. What are the problems Astra creates? The first one is pretty obvious. She complicates the game. What? Complicates the game? What are you talking about? If you've played with Astra, you understand the frustration of you switch to a character because you want them to do something, but they can't because they're stuck in their quick assist right now. So you have to wait for that to end, and then you can do the thing you wanted them to do. The other thing is, trying to switch to Astra is really annoying. It's obnoxious. Why do I have to deal with that? I just want to switch to Astra and use her ult. If you watched PhantomXIII's run with Yishuan Caesar Astra, I would argue Astra probably made the fight harder, not because Astra isn't good, because she's really good. Astra probably made the fight harder because every time he wanted to swap to Astra to use her ult, he would have to swap to Caesar first, and there were more than enough times where he would swap to Caesar and use her ult, because he was trying to immediately swap to Astra and use hers.
Alright, Astra.
No! That's really annoying. That complicates the game. That makes the game harder to play. So that is a problem Astra creates. She complicates the game. The other problem Astra creates is that she requires more investment to use well. What do I mean by that? Her kit asks you to build a lot of attack on her. Drink some water. Refreshing. Now, of course, you don't have to do this immediately, but for the early game, you're often better off trying to build your DPSs because they're the ones actually doing the damage. And Astra comes in and says, hey, could you build me, please? No, wait your turn, lady. I need to build my DPS first. And then she asks you to relearn how to play certain teams. The way you play teams with Astra are a lot more involved than the way you play them with other teams. So for example, the team, we'll say Billy, Ambi, Nicole, plays incredibly differently with Billy, Nicole, Astra. Therefore, you are incentivized or will want to relearn how to play that team, because the strategies you could use before with Billy, Ambi, Nicole are not the same you are going to use with Billy, Nicole, Astra. And that's a resource you have to spend relearning that team. Okay, so that might have been a bit harsh. I really like Astra, but I'm not just going to tell someone who's never played the game, oh, just use Astra. No, that's probably not the best advice for them. They should probably hear something else first. So moving on, what are the problems Astra solves? The obvious one is DPS. Like, a lot of DPS. she makes certain playstyles much more usable. Because Astra exists, we had teams that used quick swap a lot. We had them before, but they weren't really fleshed out. Astra jumps in and says, hey, I am the quick swap queen. Put me on the team and we're swapping like there's no tomorrow, baby. Let's go. And because of that, a lot of team compositions really opened up. Before, it was kind of awkward to play some characters together because we have to swap between them, but there's really no good way of doing that. And Astra makes that really good. And finally, Astra is good enough in basically every team to be a dominant support. But what about this team? Yeah, that team, the one you're thinking of, even in that team, she's still really good. On to Caesar. What problems does Caesar create? Well, none, really. Her ult isn't good. That's more of a flaw in her kit, but that's not really a problem she creates. We don't have an ult that is a good utility ult, and that's kind of fair, I guess. It does refresh her shield and her buffs from it, but that's oftentimes not good enough. So that's fair if that's the problem with Caesar. She doesn't have quick assists, but that's not really a problem she created. It's just something she doesn't have. Like, I'm not docking Astra because she doesn't deal daze, because she doesn't stun enemies. That's kind of silly. That's not what she's supposed to do. So yeah, I'm trying to really rack my brain, but that's great. It's probably better to not rely on a bunch of agents that create problems if you don't know how to overcome them. Okay, I'll be fair. We'll add that Caesar's shield only applies to the active agent. So if you have off-field agents, they'll still get the 25% damage buff from her additional ability, but they won't get the up to 1000 attack from her shield. She doesn't buff the entire team with her shield. We'll go with that for a problem she creates. Why not? So what are the problems that Caesar solves? Well, DPS. Obviously she's not as good as Astra, but she still solves that problem. And I'm going to reference some of the main points I made earlier. She simplifies the game. She requires very little investment to use well. And she's good enough in basically every team. But what about this team? Yes, that one too. So let's talk about some of this. What is Caesar's simplicity? Caesar's simplicity is, do you see that yellow? Well, when you see that yellow, you should press the assist button. Is that it? That's it. And if you're feeling extra spicy, you can press EX. So it's, you see yellow, you press assist, and then you press EX. Whoa, calm down there, King. That's a bit too spicy. Assist into EX? That's a bit too complicated. I don't know if I can remember that. All the mobile players in the audience, raise your hands. I recognize you because I am also a mobile player. I have an alt account that I'm using on my phone. Playing on your phone is a nightmare. It's so hard to do anything. You have to manually go into the settings and say, yes, I would like to swap in the other direction. You're so limited in what you can do on your phone. It's so obnoxious. And what Caesar does is, did you see the yellow flash? Well, you just press assist, and that's it. That is her supporting the team to the fullest extent. That sounds quite silly, but it's really true. She's very simple to use, and you're getting the full extent of her buff even on your phone. And that's awesome. The other cool thing about Caesar on mobile, because you press assist and you get a giant massive shield, what it means is you can rotate to your third support partner without having to worry about them getting blown up if you send them in. What that means is you can get Caesar's shield and then immediately switch to your support, have them press EX. It doesn't really matter when, because they won't take damage because they have a giant shield. And that lets you rotate through your team without having to go through the settings of your phone and ask it to swap to the left when you swipe the assist button a certain direction. It's really annoying. If you haven't played on your phone and you're trying to help people, I guarantee you, if you play on your phone, you will understand the struggles. You will understand how annoying it is to actually play this game on your phone. Next is Caesar's shield reduces the punishment players receive for their mistakes. Now, I've heard some content creators say, oh, you just ignore your mistakes. That's not true. It's true that you can ignore some of your mistakes. That doesn't mean you can just completely ignore your mistakes, because if you never dodge, then your shield's gonna go away, and that means the buff is gonna go away. So you're still going to have to learn to play the game. You're just not punished for not pressing dodge at the exact right time, then realizing that it was a fake out move, and because you pressed dodge now, you can't dodge later, and so they hit you. And finally, this is the most important part about Caesar's simplicity. Caesar's simplicity helps players overcome the hardest problem of the game. What was that? Oh right, that was understanding how to play. And last up is Caesar's investment. I mentioned this before. What is Caesar's investment that she wants? Basically nothing. She's really quick and easy to use. Immediately when you get Caesar, you can just start playing with her. You don't need to bother mapping out combo routes or optimal rotations. It's just, hey, the thing I was already trying to do, well, Caesar already lets you do that better. Great. And for equipping things and leveling up things on Caesar, the only thing that changes with her build is her impact. You can just level her core, use any impact W engine and drive disc, and ignore the rest. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore the rest. What I'm arguing is you don't really need to max out your EX or your defensive assist. Just get them up to level 7 or something and just leave them there for a while. Whereas with Astra, part of her buffs come from her EX. So you kind of want to level up her EX. But with Caesar, it doesn't really matter as much. And that's primarily because all of her buffs are static. You kind of want to build Astra because Astra buffs the party better the more attacks she has. And the only thing that scales with Caesar is the HP of her shield, which is based on her impact. And again, you can just throw any random W engine and drive disc that gives impact, and it's good enough to do what you want to do, which is stun the enemy relatively quickly and give you a shield so you aren't punished for making mistakes. I understand I've said some things that maybe some players disagree with or are a bit annoyed by, and that's totally fair. So this is my appeal to the experienced players. Think back to when you first started playing. We probably just used random attacks in teams because we didn't quite understand what we were supposed to be doing, and that's fine. But now we have a lot of new or returning players who are joining because they have their Xbox, or they thought the 2.0 version looked kind of cool. So the advice of, well, just use Astra. It's the same thing as, well, just dodge. It's like, well, if I could just dodge, I would have done it, moron. I'm trying to dodge and I'm failing. That's why I'm dying. I don't have the experience to dodge well. Instead, what would be more helpful is saying like, hey, what kind of drive discs are you using? What do your attack combos look like? When you're getting hit by the enemy, what is the enemy doing? Those are questions to guide players to help them understand what they are doing. That's the most helpful way to teach new players, not say, just use Astra. Okay, thanks. You might as well have just said, just spend $200. Oh, one thing I completely forgot to mention. Because she gives you a shield and you're not interrupted, it helps you learn how to do your combos. And that's kind of important because a part of playing the game is understanding, wait, when can I use this combo? Oh, okay, I can use it at this time. So here's a little personal experience. I did a test run last night. I wanted to compare the King Caesar versus the opponent Astra. And on the right side of the screen, you're seeing the scores I got on Deadly Assault. Those scores don't look good at all. Kind of look suspicious. Why are the scores low? If you've seen my content, you probably know I'm a better player than this, right? Why is my score so low? Caesar, Astra, and Nicole have zero equipment. There's nothing on them. The only person with any equipment is my Billy. They have no drive discs, they have no W engines. There was nothing on them. And the boss I was facing was Notorious Pompeii. The total score is a bit misleading. The damage score is only 80-point difference, and Astra beat Caesar in that. So let's talk about that. I did the clear with Caesar first, and that side took 5 minutes. I think I reset maybe once or twice within the first 20 seconds, because I remembered, oh right, this is how I'm supposed to use this team without any equipment. And that took roughly 5 minutes. I did get hit once or twice, but I had a shield, so it didn't really matter as much. So yeah, it was pretty simple to do. It was nice and relaxing. I enjoyed it. And then I did Astra's side. And Astra's side, as you can see, it got a higher score, so it was obviously better, right? Well, that score took 15 minutes. It took a lot longer because I had to restart more times. Now you might be thinking, wait, why would you have to restart? Well, that's because the scores I got were lower. I was trying to do optimal rotations with the team, and Astra made it complicated. Whenever I quick assisted to Nicole during stun because I was on manual mode, her quick assist is a heavy attack. So when you quick assist to Nicole, it triggers a chain attack. Uh-oh, well this stinks. To be fair, that's more of a manual mode issue, but I think that still happens on auto because it's still a heavy attack, so I think I reset maybe 7 times. A couple of them were reset somewhat early, and one of them I had to reset because Billy died. If only there was a character who could help solve that, huh? I don't think that exists. And some of them I reset early because I knew, like, oh, this isn't going to be a good run. I need to reset. And remember, Caesar's run only had like 1 or 2 resets, and they were very early in the run, like maybe 20 seconds in. And I had to do multiple runs with Astra's team to get a score that was slightly better. In that run, my brain was firing on all cylinders. I was locked in. I was thinking, oh man, okay, I need to swap in Nicole here. I need to build up her energy. She has enough energy right now. If I EX here and the stun gauge is at 80, then I'll still have enough to use her ult during the stun rotation. Then I'll swap back into Billy. He has enough energy to use 1 EX here right before the stun. And my brain was firing on all cylinders. And what was the payoff? 80 higher damage score. Now, don't get me wrong, it was fun, but that team took more time and effort to perform well, whereas Caesar's team took less time and effort to perform pretty much exactly the same. 80 damage score, and it would have been a higher score if I wanted it to be. I only did the run once, and then I immediately swapped to using Astra. And what's one of the resources we invest into playing the game? Oh, that's right, time. Time and effort are resources. Astra's side took more investment than Caesar's. Now, of course, this is not a one-to-one. You're going to have something equipped onto them, I hope. But this is just an example of when people say, oh, just use Astra because she's better. Well, not necessarily. All right, now we're going to the counter-arguments against using Caesar. These will go slightly beyond the gameplay because many of them do actually go beyond just the gameplay. These arguments are pretty good. There's nothing really wrong with them. The first one is pretty simple. I already understand how to play the game very well. And because of that, I don't really need to rely on Caesar. And yeah, that's fair. The next one is you already have the agents that does what she does, which is either buff the team or protect your team. And those agents are good enough or better than she is. Hey, that's also fair. Nothing wrong with that. Finally, the last one is I don't want to use her or I don't like her. Yeah, that's fair. Maybe not from a gameplay perspective, but hey, play what you want to play. Your time, your money. These are all perfectly fine reasons to not use Caesar. Nothing wrong with that. But the next section is kind of the opposite. These are all the kind of dumb reasons for why you shouldn't use Caesar. I've heard or seen these arguments from people, so I'm not trying to make a straw man argument. These are arguments I've seen people make. The first one's kind of a fun discussion. If I replace Caesar, it's a waste to invest resources into her. She's just gonna sit on the bench the whole time, so why bother using her? I want the end game rewards, and other limited agents are better for that than Caesar. And finally, she's just a crutch. These are all incredibly flawed and short-sighted. On the topic of replacement, why are we replacing Caesar? Think about it. Why are you replacing Caesar? Caesar is good enough for every team. Caesar is a strong support that wants very little investment. And Caesar helps us improve our understanding of the game, which is the biggest problem for most players. So that means that if we are replacing Caesar, then that agent is probably meaningfully better for that team. I say meaningfully better because if it's like, oh, it's 1% better. Come on, be realistic. A 1% difference? You're gonna spend $200 for a 1% difference? Come on, be realistic. That means we have enough resources to invest them into new agents. Remember, resources include time. This is time to grind for those resources, and also the time to understand how you're going to play that team or fight against certain enemies, depending on the complexity of that team and those enemies. And finally, it means that our understanding and performance at the game is acceptable, or good enough, to the point where we don't need to rely on Caesar. Caesar covered up our mistakes. Well, we don't really have any mistakes. And if your reasons don't match at least 2 of these, then apart from the, well, I just like them, legitimately, like, what is the goal? Why are you replacing Caesar? But I might bench her after 6 months. If I've been playing for 6 months and I bench her, it's a waste of resources, right? And to that I respond, if a player benched Caesar after playing for 6 months, that's awesome. That's incredible. What? Why is that a good thing? Well, no, not the benching part itself is not the good thing. But the benching means something. There is a reason behind it. It means you've overcome the hardest challenge and you understand the game. It means you no longer need to rely on Caesar to cover up your mistakes or weaknesses in your gameplay or your equipment or your team building. And hopefully, it means you're probably willing to continue playing the game and help build the community around it. Benching Caesar after 6 months doesn't matter if players quit the game after 3 months. That was a big issue back in 1.0. A bunch of players pulled on Ellen's banner, and then they quit playing. So yeah, when people say, oh man, I guess I'm replacing Caesar, that's awesome. I love it. That's a wonderful issue to have. That's really good. So here's a personal example from mine. The agent I regret pulling most is Trigger. What? I thought Trigger's really good. Well, she is. I pulled Trigger because I thought, awesome. Now I can use her to replace someone else. Now when I play the game, I realize I don't even really use her outside of Sandby teams. Because even if she can be technically better, she's not substantially better without those extra resources. Now granted, we did get just, that's not it. We did just get Yixuan, and there are players who have been pioneering a Yixuan Trigger Astra team, and that's kind of interesting. So I'm not saying that Trigger is bad. I'm just saying that for my account, I realized that, man, Trigger's really good. But I never needed her. Funny enough, Caesar is probably better than Trigger without their W engines. Trigger's support ability is heavily carried by her W engine, and Caesar's isn't. So, Peebus Penguin made a video comparing the two, and I think it's really interesting. The link to that will be in the top right. I recommend you check that out. It's the end game guy. He wants those rewards, baby, and he's gonna grind for them. The end game rewards are a complete scam. The only real reward is the satisfaction of playing. And to put the math behind it, I told you we would have some math problems, didn't I? Well, if you are only getting 4 stars in Deadly Assault, I put up a 4 sign with my hand, you can't see it, and B ranks in Shiyu 6 through 7, we'll assume you got an S rank on floor 5. That means every 2 weeks, you are not earning 260 polychrome, a little more than 1.5 pulls, or around $4.33. That's ignoring the things with top up and I changed my VPN to be from Malaysia, whatnot. 740 investigation merits. That's almost 2 Bupon and about a third of a hamster cage. And 195,000 Denny's. That sounds like a giant number. It's really not. When you get to internet level 50, it's 156 batteries of Denny. That's nice, but again, you're getting at least 240 every day, and so it's a little over half a day's worth of farming. So what does this mean? So if you're the player and you got the grind set, man, I gotta get the endgame rewards, I gotta get them all. That's why I can't use Caesar, I have to use stronger, more powerful agents. Cool, so if you spend 200 pulls, they'll probably get you 2 limited agents-ish. That's assuming you don't lose any 50-50s. So we'll just say if you spend 200 pulls, again, we're not counting the top-ups, for around $400, or the value of $400, the rewards you're adding to your inventory are now 6,760 polychrome, which is 42.5 pulls, 19,240 investigation merits, which is about 48 Bupons or 9.5 hamster cages, and 5,070,000 Denny, or about 4,000 battery of Denny. Over the course of a year, for the value of $400, you spent 200 pulls, to get 42.5 pulls over the course of a year. That's terrible. That's atrocious. That's a really bad investment. Again, if you enjoy playing the game, go for it. But if your reason for playing is to get endgame rewards, I'm going to tell you, they're not worth it. That's part of the FOMO. I don't blame players who think like this. The game is designed around creating FOMO and saying, hey, how can we get players to spend money they wouldn't have otherwise? So I totally sympathize with players who think like this. Don't spend $400 to get 42 pulls, man. That's awful. Some people say that they aren't your financial advisor and then give you financial advice. I am your financial advisor. Here is financial advice. Don't ever do the thing you see right now on screen. That is bad. Finally, the argument that annoys me the most because it's the most incorrect. She's just a crutch. Sure, let's say I agree with you. I don't, but let's say I do. Guess what? A lot of players don't know how to walk. What do you mean they can't walk? Are you being ableist? No. They don't know how to dodge. They don't know how to build. They don't know how to play well. They do not understand the game. These players are struggling to play the game. And what do people who struggle to walk need? Crutches! You need crutches! You can't walk! Pick up the crutches! Oh, but man, after 6 months, it's like, I might get better. It'd be, maybe I shouldn't invest in crutches, because, if I bench my crutches after 6 months, maybe I know how to walk. It's like, if I learn how to walk after 6 months, like, why would I bother getting good? Dude, you can't walk. Shut up and pick up the crutches. All right, enough joking around. In conclusion, Caesar is amazing for players who struggle playing or understanding the game, and using her will help them improve. She's really good at easing the learning curve of, oh, this is when that enemy did that attack, so I should dodge it this time. Caesar really eases that learning curve. And finally, Caesar is good enough to be used to clear everything in the game comfortably and quickly. And yes, as you improve at the game, you will eventually graduate from needing to rely on Caesar. You will eventually get units that are more powerful at supporting your teams than Caesar. I'm not delusional, that's absolutely true. But it really bugs me when players have a lot of experience and they're telling players who might be new players, well, Caesar doesn't provide as big of a DPS buff as this other agent. Therefore, you shouldn't pull for her or use her. Yes, that is true for experienced players, but that is not true for most players. I want to encourage players to enjoy playing the game, and if they want to become better at it. Just blanketly saying, yeah, well, you shouldn't use Caesar, is not good advice. I understand they're probably talking to a giant audience and they have to make those kind of blanket statements. And those blanket statements are a lot easier to make, and that's fine. But I don't want to make those openly blanket statements without a lot of explanations behind them. There are some players who are really good at the game. You don't need Caesar. She's not going to meaningfully help you. Some players are not good at the game. Again, that's not a moral judgment. That is perfectly fine. I was once like that. I might actually still be like that. You should probably use Caesar. Hey, that's the title of the video. All right, that's it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. It really means a lot. I really want to inspire players to learn how to play the game. If they enjoy playing, of course. I will happily respond to any questions and discussions you have in the comments. And if you want other people or players to see this, feel more than welcome to share this around. I'm not a large channel, so my videos don't get sent out to a ton of people, but I think this is a discussion worth sharing with other people. And if for some reason you watched this whole thing and your takeaway is, you had some good points, made some funny jokes, but I'm not going to use Caesar. I don't like her. I don't want to use her. She's not interesting. I think she's ugly. I don't make mistakes. I don't need her. She looked goofy. She looked dumb. She's a brain dead loser. Oh my god, she heard you. She's coming after you. Quick, like, comment, subscribe, and maybe she'll forgive you. Run away. Quick, ask for forgiveness. Run.